A Venezuelan patrol vessel raced toward a U.S. Navy destroyer at 22 knots, ignoring identification protocols and holding a collision-prone bearing. To most people, that looks like a direct act of aggression. But here's the shocking part. The Gravely didn't respond with missiles or guns. It recorded every move. Why would the world's most powerful navy rely on documentation instead of firepower? The answer reveals how modern naval warfare plays out, not just at sea, but in diplomatic arenas thousands of miles away. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. A patrol boat barrels in at 22 knots, refusing to yield, bow angled straight toward one of the most powerful destroyers in the Atlantic. The USS Gravely's bridge crew saw it unfold in real time, not because lookouts spotted it first, but because the Aegis system locked it in before it was even visible at sea level. The track was given a temporary designation, Sierra 214. What struck operators on the Combat Information Center display wasn't just speed. It was the uncanny way the blip held a nearly constant bearing. To trained eyes, that suggested a high likelihood of collision if nothing changed. Seconds became minutes as the numbers tightened and the assumptions grew heavier. Usually, ships in commercial lanes broadcast their identity through the automatic identification system, a digital handshake showing name, course, type, and intent. But this contact remained dark. No AIS, no radio hail, no electronic acknowledgement of presence. It moved as if hiding, even when closing distance on a U.S. Navy ship. For officers monitoring the radar scope, the mystery wasn't just frustrating, it carried potential hostile weight. A vessel that ignores every standard of maritime signaling becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability at sea can be the tripwire for escalation. Operators counted more than the silence. They logged speed fluctuations. The vessel had been crawling at 12 knots at first, a pace more typical of a standard patrol. Then, in a window of a few minutes, its propellers bit hard and the wake grew long. The plot updated, 16 knots, 18, 20, and then a sustained 22. At that pace, with bearings frozen, the closest point of approach shrank down from several miles to a range sailors considered uncomfortably tight. Danger, on a chart, is not a sudden burst of alarms. It is a slowly shrinking number that refuses to stabilize. The concern wasn't conjured in isolation. Crew members had long memories of Venezuelan tactics. In the skies above, Caracas had ordered pilots to fling their jets within a few hundred feet of foreign aircraft, shaking them with noise and turbulence. At sea, they had been known to fire on small smuggling craft, sometimes without warning, making the coastline unpredictable. These patterns were reminders that sudden surges of aggression weren't hypothetical. They had precedent. No one wanted to assume harmless intent. Legally, Gravely was safe in its posture. International law under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea grants nations territorial seas only 12 nautical miles out. Beyond that, waters are international. Gravely's position was well outside that limit, ensuring no violation could be claimed. But legality rarely calms nerves when a fast patrol boat rushes your hull. Law offers clarity for after-action reports and diplomatic cables. It does little to ease the escalating standoff seen from deck level. From Gravely's own rails, sailors peered at plumes of exhaust each time the Venezuelan captain throttled up. Through binoculars, outlines of men on deck came into view. One stood near a forward-mounted gun, clearly visible against the backdrop of a swaying deckhouse. He wasn't firing, but presence near a weapon at that distance is a silent message of force. Each passing minute brought fresh entries in the logbook. Every radar ping, every course correction, and every bearing angle was entered into the record. Doctrine held that Gravely would not fire first, no matter the angle, until aggression became undeniable. That does not mean those aboard felt any relief watching the approach narrow. By the time the vessel eased off, Gravely measured the closing point at just over 3 miles, a sliver in the vastness of the ocean. One wrong helm order and steel superstructures would have been scraping across water at combined speeds that guaranteed disaster. Instead, the patrol boat finally veered. What lingered wasn't just relief, but curiosity. How does restraint outweigh the temptation of overwhelming firepower? The answer lies in the unseen tools Gravely relied on to manage the crisis without a single round fired. With a patrol vessel closing in, Gravely revealed its strongest weapon wasn't a missile or a gun. The technology giving the ship the advantage was its ability to see and record long before the situation turned volatile. The Spy-1D phased array radar swept the sea in constant arcs, painting precise tracks and speed data onto the consoles. Operators could tell not just where the Venezuelan craft was, but how each small course change altered its future path. It made the unseen tangible, converting guesswork into documented certainty. Hovering behind that shield of radar, Gravely also had the SLQ-32 system humming. Designed to listen for hostile signals and confuse hostile radars if needed, it gave assurance that if electronic warfare broke out, control would remain on the American side. High above, the Seahawk helicopter orbited, offering aerial views of every move below. To sailors standing on deck, it might look like restraint, but the layers of awareness made sure restraint was always a choice and not a risk forced upon them. Still, the choice wasn't simple. Targeting solutions were already prepped inside the system. If the captain had issued the order, weapons could have locked on almost instantly, yet no armament was brought to ready condition. The decision line was clear: watch, record, and respond only if bait turned into a genuine strike. That razor-thin margin defined the encounter. To a junior sailor in the Combat Information Center, the temptation to load missiles must have been strong. But the Gravely's command team understood that escalation would be irreversible. Was this control a sign of strength, or could it create perception of hesitation? For adversaries watching, either interpretation mattered as much as the physical ships involved. Warnings did not come in the form of shells. Instead, the bridge team employed a pulsing green laser across the Venezuelan ship's bridge windows. To the human eye, it was piercing and unmistakable. It caused no harm, but it spoke loudly. You are being tracked, we know where you are, and we control the tempo. This kind of non-lethal display is designed to raise the pressure without forcing combat. Alongside it came radio hails in English and Spanish, unreturned at first. Each unanswered call was logged with timestamps precise to the second. The mindset was evidentiary above all else. Every change in bearing angle, every engine surge captured on radar screens was stored. Video from the helicopter overhead contributed another layer. The Gravely was not just preparing for a firefight, it was preparing for a courtroom of diplomats, journalists, and alliance partners. Future disputes wouldn't be resolved by who shouted the loudest at sea, but by what data each side carried home. And so documentation itself became a weapon. The break finally came when the Venezuelan boat responded at last. A Spanish voice crackled across open channels. "We are on sovereign patrol," Gravely's officers countered firmly, stating their lawful position in international waters, with every second captured on both audio and radar logs. It was a conversation heard not just by the two ships, but by anyone reviewing files later. The response wasn't about persuading an adversary in real time. It was about building the record that no violation had occurred on the American side. Past incidents reveal how decisive this can be. When navies presented recordings and logged evidence at global forums, the side with better documentation often carried diplomatic weight. A shot fired may settle the tactical situation for a moment, but a recording carries forward for months and shifts opinion worldwide. What carried the day wasn't the Gravely's arsenal, but its discipline. By turning documentation into a shield, the destroyer avoided escalation while still projecting control. In a world where cameras, radar logs, and recordings shape global opinion, restraint becomes its own form of deterrence. So now the question sits with you. Does modern power rest in patience rather than immediate retaliation? Should navies emphasize evidence and measured responses, or lean harder on aggressive counteraction to keep threats in check? Let me know in the comments where you stand, because the debate over restraint and retaliation is far from decided.